Nice to see you. It's been a couple of weeks.
Fucking
nice cold
hell, your hand's cold. Jeez. Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah. Living the dream. You got a new house, haven't you?
Well, yeah.
Tell the viewers, you're going to live next to me, aren't you?
Yeah, we're down the road from each other now, so we can do this more.
We'll do this more.
And hopefully it won't be like, it's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah. We
we'll
could just crack on with the podcast.
Yeah.
Anyway, cracking on with the podcast.
Cracking on with the podcast.
What are we going to talk about today?
We're talking, now we're going into the summer, season's finishing for football and rugby. And
for rugby, or union is anyway.
Yeah.
League's kicking out, but...
that's true, yeah. But yeah, into the summer where most people have their rest, their bit of time away from it for, the main sports. So we'll talk a little bit about that and what we can do with our time
in the off season.
Sounds
good.
Hopefully looking after yourself.
I think we briefly touched on coming at it from different angles. So I think we'll start off with talking about what most people should do in terms of trying to improve their athletic performance when they are a weight that they're satisfied with. And what I mean by that is, not looking in the mirror and going, I'd love to be leaner or I'd love to be bigger and heavier. Like, if your goal is just to sort of stay around the same weight and it's to improve performance in terms of your sport or getting quicker or improving your, what's the word?
Athleticism?
I meant like, Jesus, like fitness. Like, yeah. And then we were going to take it from the perspective of what an athlete should do if they're trying to lose weight during that time, or what they should try and do if they want to bulk up during that time. So without further ado, what should people do if they're happy with their current sort of physique to improve their athletic performance?
Yeah, so ultimately, if you're at the back end of your season or you're coming out, you've played your last game, you need to have that rest. You've gone through a whole season, probably a whole season of high impact, relentless, constant performing and training to perform for all season long, which is going to put strain on your joints, strain on your ligaments, tendons, everything is putting strain on you, and also mentally as well, because it is quite mentally taxing playing definitely. All season long.
Especially if you're making every training session.
Exactly. If you're
doing a full-time job.
Exactly, and full-time job, all that, all the above. It's a lot to do, so it's good to have a bit of time away from that, and making sure that you're active recovery. Doesn't mean like you're just sitting on the sofa doing nothing, for weeks on end after a season, but active recovery, going out on hikes, doing whatever, paddleboarding, whatever you fancy, just doing some stuff that way you're still moving, you're still, getting a bit of activity in there, but you're not just, slouching around.
So are we talking time away from the field?
Yeah.
In that?
Yeah. So how long mentally, physically reset? Ultimately, as long as you need, but how you feel in yourself, but in terms of physically, how long you'd need, it doesn't have to be ages, it can be 2 to 3 weeks or whatever. Me personally, I wouldn't want too long off. I've never really had that long off. I'd probably have 2 to 3 weeks off of just doing nothing but doing what I enjoy, what I want to do that's outside of my sport, and then off the back of that, then I can focus on the things that I can't focus on during the season, which is kind of the main point of this podcast, I suppose. Is what you can do in your off season where you're not playing week in, week out.
And during that time, would people be sort of going to the gym still, or would they be dialing that back?
Definitely dialing it back. If you enjoy going to the gym and the actual action of going to the gym and working out, then I'm not going to stop you from doing that. But at the same time, if you are going to do that, you definitely drop your volume right back down. To, like I said, you've been under a lot of strain all season. You need to make sure that you are recovering from that, otherwise it will catch up with you. If you're doing your whole season and then continuing on that trajectory, eventually after 1 or 2 seasons, you're going to be knackered. You'll pick up injuries or whatever. So it is important to have those periods, just like you would in your programming. You do a 6-week program where you're building the intensity and then you have your deloaded week in between to let your body recover.
Yeah.
That's how you pick up injuries if you're just continuously working for the whole time. So it's just an extended version of that. There's, without going like into all the specifics, but you've got different cycles. So you've got micro, meso, and macro cycles, and they're just basically different periods. So a microcycle would be a training session, training week. You can define it within reason, but it's a small amount of training, a smaller block, which is usually a session or a week long. Mesocycle can be 4 to 6 weeks. Again, you can define it yourself, but it's just a bigger, the middle sort of portion, and then a macrocycle, which would be the whole season. So if you're talking about your macrocycle, if you're talking about that being 5 years, that macrocycle, you need to have those kind of intervals of your training, because otherwise you will get injured.
Those regular rest periods.
Yeah, regular rest periods, but also, you know, between seasons you have a bit of respite to reset yourself and recover from the season.
So first and foremost is take that time to rest.
Yeah.
Give yourself sort of 2 to 3 weeks where you're dialing back the volume, taking a step away from the game itself.
Yeah, if you feel like you need to, you know, if you're, you know, if you love the game and you want to chuck a ball around with your mate, like obviously, yeah, do it. But in terms of the physicality side of things, the physical side of things, you need to have a little bit of rest, whether that's just dropping the intensity and the volume right down, or it's coming away from it completely. But just being aware that if you do come away from it completely, that you need to not start from square one, but you need to be aware that you've had a few 2, 3, 4 weeks off. So you just need to be aware of that. But it is good to have that rest to let yourself recover, because you are going to be, you know, doing damage all season. It's part of sport, but you need to make sure that you're recovering from that.
And then after someone's had that period of break, period of rest, that they're, you know, that they feel ready to go again. Obviously, the length of someone's season can vary in terms of pre-season. When we're talking about improving someone's athletic performance, you know, what would you typically describe here? Improving speed, improving sort of agility, improving fitness?
Like any of the above, to be honest. So it's the thing that you have in off season that you don't have in season necessarily is time. You know, where you're doing your team sessions or playing or whatever, or recovering, it's difficult during the season to focus on one thing in particular, because you've got so much other stuff to do. Your skill sessions, you've got your recovery sessions, you've got this, that, and the other games, whatever. In the off season, whatever you want to work on, or whatever your attribute for your specific position is, whatever that might be, you know, maybe your coach has come up to you and said, "Look, you're a winger, you're slow as fuck. Like let's get you fast." Like,
who told you that?
Then that's your thing that you can focus on in the off season. Because you have time on your side.
So you should be working on your weakest link.
Your weakest link or your best link. You know, if you're in a good place and you feel like you're physically fit, you're agile, you're whatever, and your defining attribute as a player that's, you know, a good thing is your speed.
Keep sharpening that.
Keep sharpening it up, because otherwise, you know, you'd use it or lose it kind of thing. And if you can get, you know, if you're a fast player and you're typically, you know, your kind of high performance attribute of your performance as like in the game is your speed, why not get faster? Like there's no harm in that.
That makes sense.
So if you're in a good place and you've got no real particular work-ons, choose your thing that you're good at and make yourself even better.
That makes sense.
And on the flip side, you know, which we will go on to later, is a bit of weight management. If you're a front rower or whatever, or any player, doesn't matter what position you are, but if you're carrying a bit too much weight and it's difficult in season to manage that weight, because you are playing and you need to fuel yourself properly, and it's just not the right time because you've got to fuel up properly, right, throughout the season. This is your chance to reduce your calories. Well, I'm sure this is your area, sorry, but that's your chance where you can reduce your calories, and it's not going to be too detrimental for your game on Saturday because you don't have one, which I think is a probably good time for you to kind of go into
a
that.
caveat. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think I never really thought of it as a time to, because for me, I've always thought, oh, it's time to get bigger and stronger. I've never looked at it from the speed perspective, even though I am slow as fuck. But I think, obviously, from your perspective, someone who's a coach, someone who does train that sort of athletic performance side of things, it's good to hear that actually it's good to work on the things that you're good at to continue that, and also then to work on those things that you aren't as good at. So before I do caveat onto sort of nutrition strategies and stuff, where would your focus be on, sort of strength gain, muscle gain? Because a lot of the mindset that I see from contact athletes, whether that's American football or rugby, is bigger, faster, stronger, which, is correct. But a lot of people put so much emphasis on, okay, I'm going to gain weight this off season because I want to gain pure muscle. And the way I think they see it is, if I'm so strong, I'll be able to hand everyone off. I'll be able to, if I'm stronger, I'll be quicker naturally, even without working on sort of speed stuff. So where does that fall into things?
So, if I'm understanding your question properly, or if I'm not, then tell me.
Yeah.
But I think what you're saying is that, like, a lot of people, especially in the kind of demographic of players that are don't have strength and conditioning and don't have the full-time kind of coaching staff, is their go-to is to focus on their strength training to aid their performance. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. That's certainly the mindset of myself, and also a lot of the people I would play with at that younger level, especially when you're sort of around the 18 to 20 mark.
Yeah.
Because naturally you're coming through from the teens and you're seeing players that are naturally way bigger than you because they're adults, and you go, the only thing that is, you might be really good at your age group, but you're going into that adulthood phase, and at your age group, I've been really quick. I've been, I've not been smashed around the park, but now I've done a one session with the adults and I'm getting beaten up. Yeah. I need to put on size, and as a detriment, you lose that speed. You lose that. You put so much emphasis on just going to the gym that you might lose your little skills, like being really good at kicking.
I love that you've mentioned that, because that's something that I hadn't thought of before necessarily, but I've experienced and seen in other people as well.
That's 100% me.
Yeah.
When I was 16, I had a really good strength and conditioning coach. Little caveat here, but had a really good strength and conditioning coach. He's gone on. He's gone on to, like, do strength and conditioning coach for really high end cricket clubs in India. And then I went to college, which was a state college, and a public college, and didn't have that level of support. And I just thought that exact thing I've just said is, I need to get bigger, and I was slow as it was, so I put on some size, and over time maybe gained half a stone to a stone. But my game, as a consequence, like, my skills didn't get any better. I just got bigger. I wasn't necessarily quicker, and yes, I could take a hit better and I could give hits better, but my performance wasn't any better.
The way I see it, which I think you have hit the nail on the head, there is that pressure to be stronger, be bigger, be whatever, which can have an effect on your performance, because if you're bigger, like, yes, it does have its benefits, don't get me wrong. If you're a front rower and you're stronger and bigger, that's a defining attribute for that position. But if you're a fly half, a centre, a winger or whatever, being strong and being big kind of helps, but it's not actually completely what you need to be a good player in that position. And there is definitely, ultimately, if you're thinking like characteristics in a person, if we're a similar height, somewhere between 5'10", 5'11", that kind of area.
Do you mean 6 foot?
Sorry, yes, 6 foot. If you're, there's going to be centres that are 6'2", 6'3", and you're going to be like, oh well, they're bigger and heavier. I'm going to compensate by getting heavier.
And that is exactly what I did.
Exactly, yeah. And so there is that temptation, but then you become like every other centre.
Slow,
immobile. And he's got a few inches on you in height, and that adds that weight on naturally without him having to do anything. And he can work on his speed, he can work on his agility, he can work on his actual good performance. He's got the weight. So you ultimately, if you have a physical attribute strength, whether that's speed, agility, whatever, like hone in on that, like lean into it, like definitely make that your thing. Like don't feel pressured into, oh, I have to do heavy weights, I have to put on loads of size, because ultimately it can be a detriment to your performance, again depending on what position you're in. But it's it's not, you just become like everyone else. Do you know what I mean? Like there are players out there that Cheslin Kobe, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I mean, he's a beast.
Yeah, he is a beast.
He's like 5 foot nothing.
He's 5 foot fuck all, and he's agile and fast, and that is his thing.
Yeah.
And because he's probably one of the best in the world at it,
yeah,
that's what made him be as good as he is.
Damien McKenzie sings out to me there as well, because I think he's around 80 kilos, which is like unheard of for professional rugby players. I think he's 5'9", but everyone will admit he is one of the best backs in the world at the moment, because he's so quick, he's so agile, his footwork is amazing, and his skill set in terms of passing, kicking is amazing. And I suppose you're right, he's not taking the approach going, oh, I need to bulk up and be 85 kilos and immobile.
He'd lose all of that stuff, and he'd just become an average person, like player that's his size and weight, now that he's got bigger and heavier and whatever. So yes, I understand that, and this is the trap that I'm not going to say everyone, but pretty much damn everyone that I did a post on it the other day. Like I see mates of mine, or players that semi-professional level that play a decent standard of rugby. I am talking specifically rugby here, and I watch them train, and they always do hypertrophy based training, or they always do strength training. They'll either do reps of 8 or reps of 3 or 1 or whatever. And they'll never actually, and they'll go through their bulking phase, their cutting phase, and which is not completely, but pretty much irrelevant to their sport.
Yeah.
When they could be doing bodyweight plyometrics, they could be doing speed work, they could be doing Olympic lifting and power training and percentage training to improve their speed and power, like, which will help their performance. And I think this is the thing that I can't stress enough, is that people assume that if you train bodyweight plyometrics and speed work, that because you're not lifting the volume and the intensity that you would in hypertrophy training, that you're going to lose your mass straight away. That is not the case. You can maintain, I mean, look at me, I've not trained in bloody 6 months and I'm still 90 kilos.
Yeah.
And
you're still benching, what, 115? Yeah. I thought you had 115 on the bar the other day.
I think it was somewhere close. It was definitely 110.
Little mirage, was it?
Yeah, maybe a facade.
But even so, you know, 110 and you haven't benched for 6 months.
Yeah.
Like,
people think that you're going to lose your strength. People think you're going to lose size, right? If you go into a 6 or 8 week or 12 week block, you think you can lose size. You won't, because you're still under resistance. You're still resistance training, and you're still hopefully eating similar, high protein, high carbs. Again, I'll let you delve into that later. But you're still eating similar. You're still training under volume. You'll hold on to that mass, but the muscle fibers and they're
still firing.
They're still they're still firing. There's still a bit of resistance in there. So you'll hold on to that mass. Yes, it's not optimal for gaining muscle, but you can maintain that and become more powerful and strong.
I think also what people tend to think about with that kind of muscle building, we'll call it hypertrophy if you want, but everyone thinks it's binary. It's you're either
Yeah.
hypertrophy or you're not. You're
Yeah.
either strength training or you're not. And actually, the truth of it is, it's a continuum. It's a spectrum. You know, you've got strength on one end and hypertrophy on the other, or not even on the other. But it's a sliding scale. You can be working a little bit of hypertrophy, but be working speed. You're still working hypertrophy. It might just not be at 100%. You know, turn that full
Optimal,
throttle up to 100%. I'm building muscle, but you're still building muscle to 60% capacity. It's the same with weight loss. You know, people think, oh, I need to be in a calorie deficit of 500 to 600 calories to lose weight. Well, that would be optimal. But then if you're on a calorie deficit of 200, you're still going to lose weight. You just won't lose weight as quickly. Same sort of scenario.
Similar concept, exactly.
But no, that's interesting. I think we've touched on some good points there from a perspective, because I know we've said at the start this is where we would take the conversation, but actually, you know, we don't script this. It's completely unscripted. We don't even edit it. Well, I don't. You do.
To be honest, I barely edit it.
And it's good that we've adapted the conversation, because actually it's tailored much towards what people would benefit from hearing.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to go from, you know, what should people work on, to this is if they're losing weight kind of thing. But actually the whole premise of this is, during your off season, it's sharpening the skills that you're already good at, and then potentially building some weaknesses, but not at the detriment of all your benefits.
Definitely.
Like you said, if you're a winger and you're really, really quick, don't think that gaining a stone in weight is going to make you a better player, because if it makes you really, really slow and you're agile, you're taking away from one hand, aren't you? I did just want to touch on nutrition.
Definitely.
In those sorts of things, because to me, the reason why I sort of I don't want to say shy away from talking about nutrition, but I feel like I repeat myself quite a lot. And maybe that's because it's all I do all day, every day, is talk the same stuff. And I suppose people out there don't do that. So actually reminding people what they should be doing would be of more benefit than sort of telling them something new. So if you're trying to maintain your weight, you do need to be cautious of calories. Your body is very good at keeping you the same weight. So, for example, you could skip breakfast. Like if you've been 90 kilos for a year, you could skip breakfast, skip lunch, have an evening meal, you'd eat loads more, starters, main, desserts, and your body would know, you know, roughly how to keep you at 90 kilos, just because homeostasis, we like being the same. Your body's good at doing that. You heard that. Homeostasis is in action. But if you're trying to lose weight, and this is what a lot of people struggle with when they're trying to lose weight, is you are tipping your body out of a natural state. So therefore it is going to become difficult, because your body's going to want to bring you back to that state. So that's why people go, oh, I'm always hungry, why can't I lose weight? Well, you know, stop eating in those times. You're going to be hungry at times. That's just inevitable, because that's your body's way of telling you, I'm not getting enough to bring me back to where I am. So you need to be conscious of calories. If you're trying to lose weight because you're carrying a bit of excess body weight, body fat, and you're like playing prop, for example, then I would suggest a calorie deficit of probably about 300 calories. If you're on a deficit and you've got a good amount of muscle mass, you need to keep your protein levels very high during that period. The reason for that is, at the end of your cut, so to speak, or losing weight, you don't want to have stripped your body of all that muscle that you've previously built doing, you know, heavy lifting and eating in excess. So we're talking protein levels of around about 2.5 grams per kilo body weight, which is very high, and it's quite hard to do, which is why I would also suggest tracking your macros. And I know there's controversy with people, shouldn't they track their calories, but I think if you're really dialing in with your nutrition and you've got a goal in mind, like losing weight, I don't really see how you can do it effectively without tracking those numbers, because you might be here, you might not be there. So 2.5 grams per kilo of protein is optimal in a 300 calorie deficit per day, and keeping your fluid levels high to make sure you're staying hydrated. And carbohydrate wise, I'd try and keep them relatively high because that's going to fuel you for your workouts and recovery and things like that. And I would drop your calories from mainly your fat intakes. And then the same, like the opposite end of the spectrum is those that do want to gain weight, you know, and we're not saying don't try and gain weight in terms of muscle because it'll make you slow. Like you can obviously get bigger, stronger, faster all at the same time. Maybe not at the same time, don't know. Within reason.
Yeah.
Is it what we're trying to say is you can gain muscle and still be fast. What I'm trying to say anyway. But if you're trying to gain weight, you need to be in a calorie surplus. So that means eating more calories than your body needs, so it can use those extra calories to build that new muscle that you're trying to create. An optimal amount for an athlete is probably about 300 calories per day in excess. Any more than that, and you're storing more fat. Like we said on that continuum, it's not. You will always be storing extra fat because you're in a surplus. But obviously, the more calories you're over, if you're eating 600 to 800 a day, you're probably still going to gain the same amount of muscle, but the amount of fat that you gain with that is going to be extra. And then you're in a process where you've got too much fat. So 300 is a good number. And then protein levels, you really don't need to go over maybe 1.5 grams per kilo body weight. A lot of people, me included when I was younger, I'd shoot for 2 grams of protein per kilo body weight because that's what all the bodybuilders were doing. So you think, more protein, more muscle. Actually, again, it's that continuum. You're still going to gain the amount, but actually what you're taking away from the other macronutrients like carbohydrates and fat, you're missing the benefits of them. So fats you naturally need in your body for a healthy life, but the carbohydrates are going to fuel you during those grueling workouts that when you're trying to gain weight, you're going to be putting time under the bar, you're going to be running a lot, you're going to need those extra carbohydrates for that energy. And so if you're eating too much protein, you're going to be eating not enough carbohydrates. So that's why I only give a protein target, and I would say the majority of your meals need to have at least half, a form of carbohydrates, so bread, pasta, rice, oats, and fruit. That's essentially it in a nutshell. A little whistle-stop tour. You happy with that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
I feel like that's an abrupt end to our nice little conversation, but it does put a nice little cherry on the cake.
No, I like it.
Cool. Let's sign off there. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. We're Max and James. See you next week.
Ta-da.
Ta-da, love. Ta-da.